Hey Bookends! Welcome to a 10-min check-in. I'm 10. So we're going to be doing something different, something we haven't done before. We're going to do a wrap-up. Just let you know everything we read in February, the good, the bad, the DNF. So just jumping right into it. The first, but I'm looking at Goodreads, just so you know what I'm looking at. Okay. So the first thing that we read was The Gilded Wolves by Roshani Chosky. And I would have to say that's the best book that, well, I won't say the best book that I've read all year, because I have started out the year with some really good books, but this is the best book I read in February. So it's like a buddy heist set in Golden Age or Gilded Age France, like the 1800s. And there's no magic, there's all technology. They're searching for a Babel fragment. Basically, people who have a small piece of it can do wondrous things. And the leader of the gang wants to get his house back. So yes, it was a really good book. It was a buddy heist. Out of 10 stars, we gave that 10 out of 10. Okay. The next book we read in February was Binti by Lindy Aquafor. Okay. So Binti is a book about a young lady in the future. She's African, and she's leaving her tribe to go to basically a planet that is a college, a university planet. And the book kind of dragged on and on and on. It didn't really make sense. These aliens come onto her ship. She makes friends with people on the ship. The aliens come onto her ship, mass murder everybody on the ship, even a guy that she thinks is super cute. But very quickly, she makes friends with them. With the people with the aliens who killed everyone. And it turns out the reason why they killed everyone was because they wanted the chief's stinger back. And so they're going to use the ship that they're on, which is really a living being. So it's kind of cool. But they're going to use the ship to ambush the university planet. She convinces them, this one person with this one device that nobody understands how it works. The author never really explains how it works either. It's like a fidget cube. The girl has a fidget cube that wards off the aliens. And so she explains to the chief that, hey, I'll be an ambassador for you. And now get this, there's no conflict. They go to the college school, the university school. She says, hey, dude, y'all stole his stinger. He want it back. They're like, oh, we like this stinger, but he can have it back. Like, there was no conflict. Most of it was just spent about her reminiscing about her ojese and how important it is, which is this clay and oil mixed substance that she rubs on her skin for cultural reasons, which is cool. But like, that was most of the book, and most of the book was spent with her in her monologuing about ojese and her culture and being scared. But there was really no conflict to it. We rated Binti, let me see, we rated Binti 3. Okay, so Binti we rated 3 out of 5 stars because it was interesting. It just had it was interesting, boring, I'll say it like that. Like, I kept reading it because I felt as though I had to. So 3 out of 5 stars. The second book that we read was Binti Home. So Binti Home was basically, she's on the university planet. One of the dudes who mass murdered everyone on that ship who was innocent, because people on the ship didn't steal anything, right? They didn't steal the chief's stinger. Someone who was already on the planet stole the chief's stinger. So one of the people who helped to mass murder innocent people was given an invitation for free to go to the university college. Didn't have to take a test or anything. So she and that person, they're still friends. They're on the university planet. And she wants to go back home for a pilgrimage. Now, she spends the first book saying how unlike her people she is, right? Because when they want her to marry, she doesn't want to marry. They don't go off-world, she wants to go off-world. They don't really have dealings with outsiders more than necessary. She wants to have dealings with outsiders. I'm sorry, so I'm sick sometimes, and sometimes I have to go to the doctor, sometimes I have to go to the hospital. So, anyway. Yeah, so she spends the first book saying how unlike her people she is, even though she's culturally tied to them. But now she wants to go back to her home for a pilgrimage. And once again, things are left pretty unexplained, and the whole book is basically, I mean, most of it is just cultural. That's it. It's mostly just a bunch of cultural stuff. There's not a lot of action. It was a 2. Okay, next book that we read in February, we read Perfect Peace by Daniel Black. Now, for the Blackathon books, instead of rating it from 1 to 10, we rated it from 1 to 5 because we had less time to read them, so we couldn't be as critical or analytical of them. So Perfect Peace got a 4 out of 5 stars. It's about the Peace family. So the mother wanted to have a daughter. She ends up having a son who she calls a daughter, raises the child as a girl until she feels as though everyone is going to find out. And so we follow Perfect as he navigates the world, as once living as a she and now living as a he. This book is in the 1920s. I want to say, let me just look at my thing. I think it's in 19. Did I write down when this book was? Okay, I don't know when this was, but it's rural time, so it was rural South, and I believe it's in the 1920s, 1940s. So yeah, basically it's just the Peace family and what they had to go through. Okay, next book we read was The Princess Theory. That got DNF'd. So it wasn't that the book was bad. From what we did read, it was well written. It's just that the cursing just kept coming for no particular reason. I'm not upset about cursing. I don't like it, but if it has a purpose, then it makes sense. If it's just, someone saying blah 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 blah, just in regular conversation, blah 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 blah, Daniel's effery and Sasha's essery, and like I don't like when it's overdone, and for A Princess Theory, it was just overdone. So we DNF'd it. There was no rating for that. Underground Airplanes, that got Underground Airlines by Ben Winters. That got a 2 stars out of 5 for me. It got, I think 4 stars from 2, so it came to, we averaged it out to a 3-star. It's basically set in an alternate future where the Civil War didn't happen, and so blacks are free in 46 out of 50 states. But the freedom is really relative, because like if I want to go to a hotel or something, I have to give the white person at the desk my social security number, my ID, where I live, where I work. So that's not really freedom, because it's still being monitored, just not on a plantation. I didn't like it because the protagonist, I think his name was Vincent or Victor, something, not worthy enough for me to remember. He was so self-loathing towards like when he described black people, he described them in such an ugly way. But then when he described someone who was mixed, handsome yellow boy. The black girl ain't cute, but the little mixed boy is handsome. Yeah, so it was a lot of self-hate, and his job is basically to track down runaway slaves and bring them back to the plantation. The author did not write it in a way for me to care why he was doing it. There was no justification for why he was doing it, and the author did not write it in a way to garner any sympathy or like for this character. So I did not like him. The only thing that makes him change his mind about how wicked and evil what he's doing is, how Uncle Thomas what he's doing is a white woman who fell in love with a black man and has a mixed child. So none of the black people he's hurting made him feel bad. None of the black families that he split up made him feel bad. But the white woman who had a relationship with a black man and has a mixed child. And so these two go on to be partners, not sexual partners, but partners. And it's like, now he's out to save the world. I'm like, I don't care. I'm definitely not, if there's gonna be a part 2 to this book, I'm definitely not checking in for this. 2 can buy it if she wants it. I'm not checking in for that. The next book we read was The Unlikeliest by Carrie Firestone. This was not a part of the Blackathon. It was just another book that was read. This garnered a 10 out of 10 stars. It is a contemporary YA fiction. I hate contemporary YA fiction. I hate it. I don't want to hear about, you know, generally it's rich kid problems. Generally, because like, oh, kid in the suburbs, angst. My parents don't understand. But the Unlikeliest was nothing like that. Basically, it's a bunch of kids that it's unlikely that they would have met under other circumstances, but they did meet, and they go around trying to do good things. The way the author wrote it, the way the author wrote it, it was as if you were running around right next to them. So, you know, that was interesting. They don't have curfews, and like no one's asking where they're going, and parents are saying, yeah, you can borrow my car. Like, wow, must be a nice life. They were still rich kids with rich kid problems, but it was still interesting. Okay, next book that we read is Eve of Eridu. So there's 2 books. It's The Harvest, which is the prequel, and Eve of Eridu, which is the actual full-length book itself. They're both written by Elena Andrews. So basically this is a dystopian set way in the future after World War III, apparently due to the war and a virus. The 96% of the human population has been wiped out. The only way to remain is if you are near emotionless, because somehow or another the virus feeds on people who have strong emotions. We follow the protagonist, Eve of Eridu, as she basically prepares to pass a test to either be harvested in as, you know, an adult to get a wonderful position within Eridu, or to be culled, which is basically, you know, losing her physical form to live in a digitized world. We never find out if the digitized world is real or if it's just a facsimile of people that they've killed so that people don't feel bad about dying. This garnered a 10 out of 10. Like, I sped read this because it was so good. Not because I was in any rush, but because it was so good. So both Eve of Eridu and The Harvest got 10 out of 10. We also read 2 books by author T. Seymour again. One was A Promise Kept, and then the other was Nothing's Ever Promised. So both books are standalones, but they're about the same family. So in A Promise Kept, Louis Hiroshi is a 10-year-old boy who's being taken to a segregation camp during the 1940s, during like the World War I. He's a shy boy. He ends up meeting the daughter of a soldier, a black girl. He's Japanese, she's black, and they become best friends. And as it turns out, she ends up having to leave because her father gets sent to Germany to go into active duty, and he makes a promise to her that he's going to find her one day so they can, you know, be friends again, and she promises that she'll always want to be found. When they become adults, he looks for her and he finds her, but he wonders, is she going to be able to love the person that he's become now? Because he became a soldier himself when he turned 18. He also became an alcoholic due to the things that he saw during the war. So he has some baggage with him. He also has some PTSD, which at the time was called shell-shocked. So he has some baggage to him, and she has some baggage as well. It's a very nice love story. It's not lust-filled, it's love-filled, and it progresses very nicely. The next book was Nothing's Ever Promised, which follows Lewis's youngest brother, Levi, who's called Lee for short. He is an investigative journalist living in New York during the 1970s. And a girl comes to his home and says, "Hey, I'm your brother's daughter by Opal." That was the black girl's name, Opal. And, you know, help me find my parents. And he's like skeptical about it because he's like, wait a minute, they didn't tell me they had a daughter, and you're kind of old to be their daughter. But he ends up taking her in anyway, and they have kind of they have a friendship. They start a friendship. He starts to have some feelings that he feels are improper towards her because she could be his niece. But anyone who reads the first book knows that she's not his niece. So if you read the first book, even though it's a standalone, you know she's not really his niece, but she thinks that she's his niece because she's been told all her life that she's Opal's daughter. And so he's beating himself up about the feelings that he has, and he also has some other rocks on his shoulder, chips on his shoulder that he has, you know, that he's living with. And yeah, then some secrets get revealed, and it's like, what? Wait, huh? So that was a really good book too. Both books got a 10 from the both. I'm sorry, I got a 5 from the both of us because on the Blackathon scale it's 1 to 5. So both books got a 5. My favorite was A Promise Kept. T's favorite was Nothing's Ever Promised. Okay, last book we read was A Poet X. The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo was supposed to be the group read for the end of Blackathon for a discussion. This was my least favorite book, not because of the author's writing style, not because of the content, but because it just felt like, once again, someone using African American black culture for what it can provide them with, and, you know, taking the fruits of our labor but not taking on the burden of our struggle, basically. So there's a woman, a girl in the book, I think her name is Ziamira, and she goes by X. Her mother's kind of overbearing, whatever. Yeah, so she gets into spoken word and rap, and what bothered me is that this was supposed to be read for, you know, Blackathon, yet the character never at any point identifies as black, Afro-Latina, nothing. For the purpose of the Blackathon, this got a 1.5 from the both of us. We didn't even bother rating on Goodreads because we didn't see the point. Because it's not the author's fault. It's just we didn't see the point. So it got a 1.5 from us. So I believe that is all. Those are all the books we read for February. Let me just make sure. Okay, because it's not labeled properly, I don't know. But I believe we read Lady Smoke too. Yeah, Lady Smoke by Larissa Sebastian. So that was a prequel that, I'm sorry, a sequel that we've been waiting a long time for. It's the sequel to Ash Princess. And basically we are following Theodosia and her friends as they travel to try to get an army to come back and fight for her country. So it's a really good book. This wasn't in the Blackathon, of course, so it was on a 1 to 10 scale. So this also garnered a 10. There's a lot of diplomacy and thought and peril in it. The action comes towards the end when Theodosia and Cress clash, and that was something. So yep, that's been all of our books for February. This is a wrap up. Let us know if you like wrap ups. I know I was talking kind of quick, but I know we have a lot of books. Thank you so much for watching, and have a wonderful day. And if you like what you saw, please like and subscribe. Bye, bookends.